On a recent Saturday afternoon, my family gathered around the kitchen table, receipts spread out like a deck of cards. We found ourselves grappling with a question that's becoming all too familiar. How did groceries, utilities, and kids' shoes, just the essentials of life, become so overwhelming? It's a question many families in our community are asking. The squeeze on middle-class families is often overlooked in the headlines that focus on job numbers or the ups and downs of Wall Street. But for everyday families, the relentless rise in the cost of essentials like food, rent, electricity, and childcare represents a quiet crisis that's hard to ignore. The current wave of inflation isn't just a matter of numbers. It's about the tough choices we face every day, like skipping fresh fruit for cheaper alternatives, postponing doctor's appointments, or saying no to extracurricular activities. Through our experiences and those of families around us, we're uncovering the hidden human costs of this economic shift, showing a pattern of middle-class decline that seems to escape the attention of policymakers. Now, to really understand what's going on, we need to look at how inflation is hitting middle-class households differently than it did in the past. Inflation has always been part of the economic landscape in the U.S., but today it feels more intertwined with the costs of living essentials: shelter, food, transportation, and childcare. Back in the 1970s, when inflation spiked, wage growth helped cushion some of the blow. But nowadays, stagnant wages are colliding with soaring prices, leaving families feeling trapped. It's not just the families feeling the pinch. Local businesses, schools, and healthcare providers are all affected. Middle-class households are the backbone of consumer spending, and their struggles ripple through the entire economy. While policymakers debate the headline inflation rates, families are grappling with the monthly decision of which bills to pay and which to postpone. Recent data reveals that between 2021 and 2023, grocery prices jumped by nearly 15%, rents climbed by 8%, and out-of-pocket healthcare costs surged. These increases are layered on top of existing burdens like student loans and childcare costs, making it even tougher for families who are already living paycheck to paycheck. Opportunities for relief, like targeted subsidies or expanded tax credits, have been sporadic and often feel out of reach. Taking a closer look at our household and families like ours helps to illustrate where the inflationary pinch is felt most. For starters, let's talk about groceries. Our grocery receipts from the last couple of years tell a clear story. A typical basket of staples, think milk, eggs, chicken, and bread, now costs about 18% more than it did just 2 years ago. And it's not just a blanket increase. Some items, like eggs, have doubled in price due to supply disruptions. For middle-class families, this means not just hunting for coupons, but making tough sacrifices, skipping meals or relying on processed foods. I recently spoke with a single parent from our school district who shared how she's had to switch to canned everything and stretch her protein budget with beans. A local pediatrician has noted the impact of these choices on child health. More cases of anemia, increased absenteeism, and rising behavioral health issues linked to food insecurity. Housing is another area where many families are feeling the squeeze. Homeownership, once a hallmark of middle-class stability, is slipping out of reach for many. Reports indicate that home prices surged by 36% from 2020 to 2023, with mortgage rates doubling. Families earning median incomes are often unable to afford local rents or the costs of moving. For us, rent increases have outpaced salary adjustments, leaving us to consider downsizing just to keep the essentials like internet access for remote learning. Utility costs have also risen, up by about 11% in the same period. Several neighbors have resorted to strategies like heating only one room or skipping car repairs just to keep the lights on. Now let's talk about childcare and education. For dual-income families, childcare is both a necessity and a major financial burden. In our area, it averages around $1,200 a month per child. As inflation rises, many childcare providers have raised their rates, leaving families in a tough spot. One friend, who's a preschool teacher and a parent, described the impossible math of needing to take fewer shifts to care for her child, all while household bills keep piling up. In a recent survey at our school, many parents reported shifting to part-time work or piecemeal gigs just to manage childcare costs. Economists highlight the regressive nature of inflation for households like ours. Low and middle-income families spend a larger share of their income on essentials, leaving little room for anything else. One economist pointed out that for the bottom 40% and the middle 40% of families, inflation hits much harder because they're spending almost all their income just to get by. In fact, recent data suggests that the middle class has shrunk by about 2.9 million Americans in the past 2 years, with household savings rates plummeting to historic lows. Take the Lee family from a neighboring town, for example. Both parents are teachers, and they've seen their annual household expenses rise by $17,600 since 2021. They've had to pause home repairs and cancel summer camp for their kids. Meanwhile, the local food bank director reports a 40% increase in demand from families just trying to make ends meet. School nurses are also noticing trends. More children coming to school hungry, unable to afford field trips, or wearing clothes that no longer fit. The school board recently approved emergency funds for free breakfasts, citing an unexpected surge in food insecurity among middle-income families. Some economic commentators argue that this inflation is temporary and will ease as supply chains normalize. They point out that families benefited from pandemic-era stimulus and that rising costs are balanced by more employment opportunities. Yet, for many families, the experience on the ground doesn't align with that optimism. While some prices may stabilize, essential costs keep climbing. Many pandemic supports have expired, and for those whose wages haven't kept pace, the cumulative effect is most strongly felt in their day-to-day lives. Critics suggest that inflation is just a necessary byproduct of global events or monetary policy aimed at preventing recession. They encourage patience, believing that wages will eventually catch up. But for families in the trenches, the reality feels very different. The middle class isn't a static group. More families are slipping from modest security into precariousness every month, which only adds stress and undermines future prospects. So what does this mean for the short and long-term impacts on families like ours? In the short run, we're seeing reduced nutrient intake, skipped preventive health care, and deferred education. Over time, this squeeze is reshaping community life. Fewer kids in sports and enrichment programs, unmet school fundraising goals, and dwindling home maintenance and community engagement. These subtle losses can lead to increased social isolation and resentment as families feel left behind by a system that once seemed to value their contributions. As experts and local leaders discuss how to restore affordability and security for the middle class, proposals vary, from targeted tax credits and expanded child allowances to subsidies for housing and utilities. Each option comes with its own costs and trade-offs, but there's a growing recognition that piecemeal aid won't be enough if we don't address wage stagnation and the rising costs of essentials. Policymakers also highlight the need for stronger consumer protection, antitrust enforcement to curb monopolistic pricing practices, and incentives for local food production and energy conservation. While these approaches will take time and investment, they offer a vision of resilience and fairness that resonates with families like ours. In conclusion, our family's experiences, and those of so many of our neighbors, shine a light on a broader American dilemma. How do we protect hardworking middle-class families from forces beyond their control? The hidden costs of inflation are measured not just in dollars, but in missed meals, unrealized dreams, and increasing insecurity. As more families fall through the cracks, the health of our society is at stake, not just in terms of economic indicators, but in whether our children are fed, housed, and able to thrive. The stories and voices of families facing this squeeze remind us that numbers alone can't capture the true cost of economic hardship. By bringing these lived experiences into focus, we can start to find solutions, ones that restore dignity and hope to the backbone of our communities.